10 times more feed from the same land, and it needs almost no barns. For decades, farmers ignored a root crop that outproduces hay, hydrates livestock from within, and quietly fueled record-breaking herds. Why abandon a superfeed that solved hunger and storage with a single giant beet? The answer starts with what hay costs us, day after day. A bale of hay looks solid, but it is mostly AIR trapped inside hollow stems. Every winter, farmers haul thousands of pounds of this brittle grass, stacking it high in barns that cost as much as a small house. Insurance premiums climb each year, not because of the weather, but because a single spark can turn a barn full of dry hay into an inferno. The fire risk alone drives up the price of every ton. Yet there is no getting around the need for shelter. Leave hay outside and rain or snow turns it to compost before the cows ever see it. The numbers on the ledger tell the story. Tractors, balers, fuel, and maintenance eat into margins before a single animal is fed. A modern round baler, depreciating with every pass across the field, adds thousands to the annual bill. For every 3 tons of hay produced per acre, most of it is handled twice, once to cut, again to bale, then moved to storage, and finally hauled to the animals. That is 4 machines, 3 workers, and 1 barn, just to deliver a feed that is half waste by volume. Hay's low density means it takes up space fast. A winter supply for a small herd can fill a barn the size of a gymnasium. The cost is not just in dollars, but in lost opportunity, acres tied up for months, buildings that could have housed grain or equipment, and labor spent moving the same material again and again. Every year the cycle repeats: cut, dry, bale, haul, stack, pray for no fire. The question nags at the end of every season: is there a better way to feed livestock than with hollow grass and expensive storage? A root the size of a bowling pin lands on the table with a dull thud. This is the mangels, sometimes called fodder beet, a crop bred in 18th century Germany and Britain, and once the pride of every serious livestock farm. Its skin glows deep red or golden, streaked with white, and it can tip the scales at 20 pounds or more per root. Farmers used to call them red giants, and for good reason. Where a bale of hay is light and brittle, a single mangel feels dense and heavy, packed solid all the way through. An archivist lifts one from a crate, hands straining under the weight. The roots are Beta vulgaris, cousins to the sugar beet, but these were never meant for the table. Instead, they were bred to feed entire herds through the dead of winter. The sight of a pile of mangels, each root as big as a newborn calf, once promised security against a long, lean season. In the ledgers of 19th century dairies, mangels appear as a line item right alongside hay and grain, sometimes with a note: cows throve like never before. Unlike hay, which is mostly air and fiber, a mangel is solid nutrition. The outer skin peels away to reveal a crisp, moist flesh that stores energy, minerals, and water. The roots are so dense that a single acre planted in spring could yield a mountain of feed by autumn, enough to fill a wagon, not just a wheelbarrow. Even in a bad year, farmers could count on a harvest that dwarfed the best hayfield. The promise was not just in the size, it was in the way these roots could be pulled from the earth, piled high, and kept through the coldest months without a barn or a bale in sight. The question that follows is simple. What makes this red giant more than just a curiosity, and why did it vanish from the modern farm? A January wind rattles the barn doors, and a farmer swings his axe through a crust of ice on the water trough. Cows gather, noses steaming, but hesitate to drink. In deep winter, livestock water intake drops as temperatures fall. Hay, the traditional winter feed, is dry, barely 10% water. Every mouthful draws moisture out of the animal's body, and when troughs freeze, dehydration creeps in quietly. Cows on a hay diet may drink 3 to 5 gallons more per day, just to keep digestion moving. Miss a day breaking ice, and their rumens slow, appetite fades, and milk yields drop. Mangelwurzel roots offer a different answer. Each one is nearly 85% water, locked inside dense, crisp flesh. When a cow bites into a mangel, it is not just eating calories, it is drinking. A daily ration of mangels can provide as much internal hydration as a full bucket of water, delivered without a trough or a pump. This built-in moisture keeps digestion smooth, even when the only water outside is frozen solid. Historical farm diaries note cows fed mangels in winter needed less supplemental water and showed fewer signs of stress or constipation. For farmers in northern climates, this advantage is more than a convenience. It is a safeguard against the unpredictable. A root pile in the yard becomes both feed and water supply, immune to power outages and frozen pipes. The hydration is not wasted volume either. The dry matter in mangels packs more energy per acre than hay, so every bite is still pulling its weight in nutrition. The winter water advantage is not just about preventing thirst, it is about keeping the whole system running when the landscape locks up in ice. Chopping through a pile of mangels, a farmer scatters the bright red chunks across the frozen ground. The herd surges forward, heads down, jostling shoulder to shoulder. Cows bellow, sheep dart between hooves, and even the old barn cat circles warily, drawn by the sweet scent. The roots vanish fast, each animal lunging for a piece, chewing with noisy satisfaction. It is not just hunger. There is something in the flesh of these roots that animals crave. Inside every mangelwurzel, nearly a tenth of its weight is pure sugar, mostly sucrose, the same kind found in table sugar. Alongside that is pectin, the same soluble fiber that turns fruit into jelly. Together they create a feed that is not just energy-rich, but wildly palatable. On a cold morning, the farmer's hands are sticky from slicing, and the air smells almost like molasses. The cows know what is coming. They crowd the fence, eyes wide, snouts outstretched. Even the pickiest steer noses aside a flake of hay to reach the chopped beet. Historical records tell the same story. In the ledgers of 1910 dairy farms, notes appear in the margins that read, "Cows fight for mangels, milk up 2 quarts." Pigs, too, were fattened on chopped roots, gaining weight faster than on any grain ration. Modern trials echo the old wisdom. When given a choice, livestock will leave hay untouched for a pile of fresh mangels. In taste tests, mangels score almost a perfect 10 for palatability, beating silage, grain, and even alfalfa. The reason is simple. The combination of sugar and easily digested fiber lights up the animal's appetite centers. It is not just feed, it is cow candy. The energy packed into each root is more than just a treat. Unlike the hollow calories of hay, every bite of a mangel delivers dense, digestible fuel. Animals fed on mangels do not just eat more, they convert more of what they eat into milk, meat, and energy. The feeding frenzy is no accident. It is the result of a crop bred for centuries to satisfy the deepest cravings of livestock and to keep them thriving through the hardest months of the year. In black and white photos of early 1900s farms, men and women stand bent over endless rows of red roots, their hands wrapped around the leaves of each mangelwurzel. Harvesting these giants was a test of endurance. Every root had to be pulled from the ground by hand, shaken free of dirt, and piled into carts. On a good day, a skilled worker could lift a ton or two, but the field always seemed to stretch farther. Diaries from the era mention aching backs and blistered palms, and farm ledgers show that labor for mangelwurzel often swallowed nearly half the cost of growing the crop. Mechanization changed everything. Tractors and combines swept across the Midwest and the English countryside, but they were not built for roots buried deep in the soil. While hay could be cut, raked, and baled by machine, mangels stubbornly resisted. Extension bulletins from the 1930s and 40s began to call them yesterday's feed, warning that the time and wages needed to harvest roots could not compete with cheap, subsidized corn and the new silage crops pouring out of grain drills. By the 1960s, mangelwurzel had all but vanished from commercial fields, remembered mostly in old herd books and faded photographs. But the story did not end there. Plant breeders in New Zealand and the UK, looking for ways to cut costs and labor, began selecting for a new type of fodder beet. Instead of roots that burrowed deep, these new varieties grew with nearly 70% of their mass above the ground. Grazing types like Base and Boltardi could be left in the field all winter, their tops exposed. Farmers no longer needed to harvest by hand or haul by the cartload. The solution was as simple as moving an electric fence. Cows, sheep, and even pigs could graze the roots directly, stripping a row each day and leaving the rest undisturbed. One New Zealand dairy farm feeding 2,000 cows reported a 25% drop in winter feed costs after switching to strip-grazed beets. Modern records show milk solids rising, fertility ticking up, and the old labor bills shrinking. The pain of hand-pulling is gone. The red giant has returned, not as a relic, but as a practical answer for farms that want to grow more feed with less work. A clamp begins with a patch of well-drained ground. No concrete, no walls, just bare earth shaped into a gentle slope. A layer of straw, 12 inches deep, forms the base, cushioning the roots and wicking away moisture. The first load of mangels arrives from the field, each root heavy and cold, stacked in rows 2 feet high. Another layer of straw follows, then another row of beets, building upward in alternating bands. By the time the pile reaches 4 feet, the clamp stretches nearly 60 feet long and 30 feet wide, holding up to 50 tons of feed in a single ridge. There is no need for plastic wrap or electricity. Instead, the entire mound is capped with a thick blanket of straw, then covered with 18 inches of soil, packed tight to keep out air and shield against frost. The sides are sloped at a steep angle, rainwater running off instead of seeping in. At each end, a vent made from bundled straw or a length of pipe allows gases to escape during the first weeks, preventing spoilage as the roots settle. Inside, the mangels rest in near darkness, their skins toughening, flesh staying crisp. The clamp acts like an underground haystack, storing energy, water, and minerals with almost no loss. Trials from Ireland and the United Kingdom show that after 6 months, more than 90% of the feed remains fresh and sweet. Spoilage rates stay under 8% even in wet winters. Unlike hay, there is no risk of fire, no insurance bill, no barn to maintain. Farmers check the clamp each week, opening one end to dig out enough roots for the herd. The rest stays sealed, protected from weather and pests. For a small farm, a single clamp can replace an entire barn's worth of hay. For a larger operation, several ridges run side by side, each holding a season's security. The method is simple, proven, and nearly foolproof. With storage solved, the focus turns to what happens inside the animal. The question of how much of this dense root is actually turned into milk, meat, and energy. A farmer stands between 2 piles, one a mountain of manure, the other barely a mound. The difference is what goes in and what comes out. Hay is about 60% digestible, which means nearly half of every bale ends up as waste. The rest is left behind in the barnyard, shovels and wheelbarrows working overtime. With mangelwurzel, the math flips. Modern feed trials show these roots are over 95% digestible. Almost everything the animal eats is converted into energy, milk, or meat. The manure pile shrinks by 1/3, sometimes more, and the barnyard chores ease up. Fields stay cleaner, bedding lasts longer, and less labor is spent hauling what's left behind. For the farmer, it's not just about saving on feed. It is about efficiency, more nutrition into the animal, less waste to manage, and a winter's work that finally feels manageable. A veterinarian stands at the edge of the feed yard, hands on the lever of a root pulper. The warning is clear. Never toss whole mangels into the trough. Choking is a real threat. Roots larger than 2 centimeters can lodge in the throat and block the airway before anyone can intervene. Even experienced herds have lost animals to a single careless feed. The solution is old but effective. The pulper chews through the dense roots and spits out uniform chunks small enough for safe chewing, each piece no bigger than a grape. This is about safety. The transition to mangels must be gradual. Start at 5% of the daily ration and build up over 10 days. Too much, too soon, and the result is scours, sudden diarrhea from sugar overload. With careful pulping and a measured introduction, the risk fades. The chemistry inside the root does the rest. Sucrose and pectin deliver energy without spiking acidity, holding the rumen pH steady. Where grain can tip a cow into acidosis, mangels offer a cool, stable burn, energy that fuels production without the hidden cost. Ledger entries from the winter of 1910 show an unmistakable pattern. Herds fed a daily ration of mangels, 40 pounds per cow, posted conception rates that climbed from 60 to 80% in a single season. The numbers were not isolated. Across Britain and the American Northeast, farm records echo the same story. Cows bred on mangels calved more reliably, produced richer milk, and showed a shine to their coats that old-timers called the mangle gloss. For years, the reason was a mystery. Modern lab analysis now reveals the missing link. Betaine, a compound found in every slice of beet, measured at over 4,000 milligrams per kilogram of dry matter in fresh samples. Betaine acts as a methyl donor, a molecule that helps a cow's liver process and export fat, clearing the way for higher fertility and metabolic health. Veterinary journals describe the process in straightforward terms. Betaine supports the liver's methylation pathway, reducing the risk of fatty liver syndrome and supporting reproductive hormones. A farmer splits open a fresh mangle with a machete, revealing the sugar-white flesh inside. What was once just a heavy root in the feed pile is now recognized as a quiet engine of herd vitality, its benefits written in the ledgers and confirmed in the lab. Today, with feed costs soaring and water scarcity tightening its grip, crops like mangelwurzel offer more than nostalgia. They are an overlooked lifeline. As modern varieties eliminate labor barriers and betaine's benefits become clearer, the line between tradition and innovation blurs. The real question now is not if we can return to smarter feeds, but whether we can afford not to. What would you plant if your herd's future depended on it?